Okay, hi. Stream Deck does work. Epic. You know, you can never be too certain these days. Just got to make sure about this stuff, this sort of thing. So, I'm back. We're doing a Xibalba dev stream again. The last one went pretty okay. We got some good updates to the website and added some new units. Once again, if you missed it before, I am using Flux now, and I am streaming kind of late my time, so it will be orange. It will be Trump. Remember the Trump. I see some people in the chat. Luciferius was drinking tequila and is now fucked. Veek woke up or is still awake. And in either way, is probably slightly fucked. Sherclastic is the essence of fuck. And then there's my brother, who I can't say fuck about because that would be rude. What's up, homies? I think that's an efficient. Yeah, there it is, Shirk. There it is. I knew somebody, at least one person in the chat, would probably at some point say that they use a blue light filter, thus rendering my blue light filter doubly funny. So, I don't really have any major announcements or anything, besides the fact that if we go to my CSGO channel, you will see this epic video. I mean, just look at that thumbnail, bro. If I can. Check that thumbnail out. It's pretty good thumbnail, huh? Pretty good thumbnail. And then also, I made an appearance on talk show, so you can check that out. One hour was yanked away because of time change. Oh, yeah. When does daylight savings time? November 7th. Oh yeah, is this like that weird I feel like that's probably this is the rare moment where it's actually like you're 5 hours ahead of me instead of 6 week. Is that true? Yeah, of course. But that was never going to be different. Happy Halloween, dude. Time traveling MFer. By the way, if anybody is ever curious about here it is. If anybody's ever curious about where the other 6 queues are, I mean V queues. You know what I'm saying. If anybody's ever curious about the other 6 Veeks, you should play this map. You'll find some answers. Yeah, that would be 5 hours. So we're 1 hour closer for a week, or some would say a week. Anyway, so if you missed the previous stream, we worked a bit on the Mackerel DOS. We added a couple of units. We added the Scrap Vault, which may be renamed at some point. The Docorden, the Scribe, the Renseer, and I think that's it. So we're in an okay-ish position for just starting out on our Regency. Got a couple of units, and we can start figuring out some of the other stuff that we're planning. I've also been thinking a little bit about how I'm going to try to do information control in a world where there are no humans, because there is something that you miss out on if you're not able to tap into like this innate sense of human history and mythology that we have. I'm not really sure how to fix that, though. I don't even know if that's possible to fix unless I were to include humans. And even then, I would basically have to make the Terran human race all about history, or not all about history, but at least partially about like history and stuff and works of fiction, in order to properly make use of it, which doesn't really make sense to me. So anyway, all that said, it's just interesting because eventually I'm going to run out of English words. I'm going to have to think about that very carefully. Everybody say hi, welcome back to my brother who just got home. I'll probably shout you through my door later on. I don't know if the mic will even pick it up. But I know that Mike will. Hey, Mike's in the background. There's the you. You! We actually do greet each other by saying you in this household. Even my mom. That's a pretty good bet. We do things a little differently around here. So, where was I going to go with it? Yeah, actually, before I streamed today, before I hopped on the stream, I walked out of my room and said, you, loudly, into an empty house, except my mother was in her room. And so she just went, you, back. So that's my life. Oh shit, the mic didn't pick it up? What the fuck? Well, I you'd back, so whatever. That is true. Veek and I have developed our own language to that extent where I'll usually say capital U with a million exclamation points as my daily greeting to say hi. But then if he ever says you question mark, that's usually him saying he's ready to call. So it's pretty good. Pretty stupid. That is the stupid reality that we have. Oh, speaking of you, Veek, did you do anything? Let's pull. Ah, already up to date. Yeah, you woo, if you know what I'm saying. And then there's the famed art of war, the martial art, the yu woo, or no, the yu fu, like gun fu for what's that guy? Who's that guy that stars in all the movies? Not Nicolas Cage. Why can't I remember this guy's name now? You did you pretty loud. You were fighting Unreal Engine. That has a U in it. It doesn't strike nobody else as a bit of a simulation that every popular engine has U. It's Unreal and Unity. They all are U. And then there's Uplay from Ubisoft. Hey, why is there so many U's in gaming? Chow Yun Fat. Man, I don't know what that means. That's not the actor I'm thinking of, though. What the fuck is this guy's name? I can't remember his name. Who plays John Wick? Godot is not you. I don't even know what Godot is, bro. Roller skates, you missed the actual you moment because you're like you minutes late, you fucking you. Yeah, Keanu Reeves, that's the guy. Jesus, I can't believe I couldn't remember him. My brother came home and you'd me through the door, which my microphone did not pick up, but then I you'd him back. And then I said, and I explained how my whole family just says you to say hi. I should have come up with a U word for Antikythera. I am renaming Antikythera. Yeah, exactly. There it is. I don't even know what getting somebody a U moment means, but if it's the same thing as... Never mind. So, what should we actually do? I didn't come into the stream with a plan. I just knew that... See, this is the funny part, is I had more of a plan for the sudden, apropos of nothing Xibalba's dev stream than I have for this one. I have no idea what I'm doing for this one, to be honest. Yeah, can I get a U in chat? Any Uers in chat? I'll do Command and Conquer next week. Or maybe... No, tomorrow's Halloween. I'll be busy pretty much all day, I think. So probably... I could probably do Monday? I don't know. I'll think about it. Antikythera. Oh, shit. Orders. What are we doing? Oh, yeah. That is true. I could do data entry. I did basically all the data entry already, Veek. I only have... Oh, shit. Don't look at that. It's a spoiler. I don't have... Oh, don't look at that either. That's all... Ah, shit. These are all spoilers. I only have... Zerg left to do train orders from. So... I'm pretty sure this is supposed to say Zerg. I just never renamed it. That's pretty good. All right. Well, I don't know why you think playing at a 4K resolution would give you more readability as opposed to less, but yes, it is indeed pretty terrible. What are you generating moment sentences with? I don't think so, Luciferius. How do I even browse my game? Here we go. All right, we need this. Oh, that's useful. Oh yeah, I should probably get the actual icons. So I'm doing data entry for the Terran Zerg and Protoss in the new engine, and basically what I'm doing is configuring the buttons. In that sense, since so much of this stuff is related to buttons, it does feel a bit weird to call this orders, but it also is handling code for the orders, so whatever. I guess the order type for this... Oh no, it should still be trained because the new Zerg mechanic is going to be... Should we have an order type morph, Veek, for morphing a unit into another unit? I don't think Bobby Kotick can sell the Brood War IP, and so the IP doesn't actually give like you can't even sell the source code anyway because it has a bunch of middleware in it, so they legally can't. The first Dawn of War was pretty unreadable, bro. They just have decals all over the place, and it's 3D, so... I don't think we need egg unit, because maybe I want to be able to train a unit directly and also morph it from something else, so... I think you would just allow it to work. Yeah, so for Iroleth, for example, we would do morph. Also, for Zerg building, do we want a different order type? And for Protoss building, do we want a different order type? Or is that, like, I don't know how we want to handle that. Well, I'm only asking about Zerg things, because if I do, like, morph underscore unit, that might, or morph unit, I guess it would probably be like this. I don't know if we need underscores or not. But it would probably be something like that. I don't know. So this is worker. Should correct my position here so I'm not getting owned while trying to type. Yeah, this is the porting process. I mean, all of the assets are ported. Well, all of the unit graphics are ported. Some effects we still need to add. But yeah, we're not really worried too much about anything else. Ah, dude, it's Enoz. I remember that guy. What's up, bro? Economy is going to scale. It'll probably scale a little bit less aggressively than it currently does, but I'm expecting pretty persistent economic gains to the point where I don't really want you to be able to use tier like 6 and 7 units if you don't have like 10 bases. I don't want you to be able to spam them to the same degree that you can spam other units. So I have to be careful with that because the upfront cost of scaling up to tier 6 and 7 is going to be pretty pricey, but if you get that, that's still not that doesn't mean you should be able to train like, whatever the tier 7 basic infantry unit is for the same cost as like a tier 4 one or something. Yeah, that's okay, man. Modding StarCraft doesn't really give you that much, I don't think. It gave me a nice start, but that's because I looked elsewhere or looked beyond it afterwards. Don't worry about build variants right now. Okay, you got it. I guess we'll go ahead and do the Othstaleth. So it's 58. So theoretically, guys, if I was writing a new order for the doing data entry for the actual game of Xibalba, like I'm doing the order configuration for one of the actual units, this is what we would be doing in the editor itself, right? So theoretically, we would have some GUI for this, but for the most part, it would be pretty similar. You would just plug in an icon, probably be able to point to a visual one too if you wanted to. Pick a unit ID from a list or just type it, and then like the order type and stuff, there'd be a drop down bar probably. I think anytime we have a drop down menu for anything in the GUI, we should probably automatically include a search bar as well. That if you type, it starts to filter the results. I don't know how that will look, but that seems like a pretty smart idea. So this is actually not a transport strain. This is a support strain. All right. I guess maybe. Oh wait, no, never mind. I already answered that question. I've decided to redesign the hatchery completely so that basically there are egg slots and instead of larvae, and the egg slots themselves will scale with the size of the structure. So the hatchery by default will probably have 3 egg slots, maybe even 2. It may be as low as 2. And the more you upgrade it, the more slots that you'll get. And then obviously, if the one slot, basically each slot acts as its own queue. So you're basically giving a new number of simultaneous build queues or train queues for each egg slot that you have. So larval colonies would probably only have 1, for example. Was that 55? Yeah. I don't mind the idea of more people making games. 129. This is morph, and then yeah, I think if you got some, especially if they're RTS adjacent, it's probably a pretty good idea to get more people on. The genre can't be hurt any further than it already has been. I'll put you that way. Was that 62? Oh yeah, for the gauze. I like how it's called melee. Well, if you're interested in putting your RTS skills to the test, I might actually recommend Cosmonarchy's Brood War mod. It's pretty solid in that respect. Not very stable right now, but doubt that'll be changed anytime soon, so might as well check it out anyway. Do that, 130. I guess I'll also jump in to Cosmonarchy Brood War data. Where's my Skith record? Is that right up? Oh yeah, and this is also morph. I'm sure it is. I've actually seen a lot of people who say like you need to have in-depth knowledge of blueprints in order to apply for this job in game design. It's like surely you would just request knowledge of programming. I don't know why you would actually need blueprints. It might be useful for some very specific tasks, but yeah, I don't know about that one, man. Seems like that's a good one. There's another morph. Shit, it's Guapissimo. What's up, bro? Yeah, the block programming is called Blueprints by Unreal, so that would be why. I don't think it's really that hard to balance everything because you just need to make sure that everybody has a like you only need to satisfy two things in order to make sure that an RTS is balanced or anything really is balanced. And the thing one, category one, is making sure that every single aspect of the game has some element of counterplay. Ideally, this is not just a non zero value, but also a non one value. You want more than one. I would say maybe the ideal number is even at least three numbers of options that a player has at any given time to be able to point to this, the current situation they're in, and say, I can use this as a counter. If they can do that, and again, it's not a hard counter system, but more of a, if I execute well using this specific thing to augment my strategy, that would be the ideal situation, actually. The ideal situation is I have X many opportunities at any point in time in the game to respond with something of my own that will make a difference. So you give players agency. If you give players agency through a robust toolkit, that is category one of making sure that your game is balanced. And number two is just making sure there's no ridiculous outlier. And sometimes these are a little bit harder to detect than other cases, but with enough playtesting and enough unit testing, you'll find all of them. If you remove all ridiculous outliers and make sure that every player's toolkit is robust enough so that no matter what decision they've made before the game begins, i.e. race selection or strategy, team composition, whatever, they have a chance, multiple chances, with multiple tools to fight back against their opponents, I think you've got a balanced game. Of course, you'll want to maybe use statistics to help you out with this and maybe see win rates and check that, like all that stuff. But the problem that stats have, and this happens in the esports and sports worlds as well, when people are being pundits and analysts and even just fans, they'll take a look at a stat of a player and say, oh, they're doing it poorly based on the stat. But they don't go any level deeper. The stat may be poor or undesirable. In this case, maybe at one race is winning too many times. It's not an exactly 50% win rate, right? But you don't know the answer as to why that is. If you have a low enough player base, maybe the people who play that particular race are just more experienced. And therefore, the stat that you see seems to be indicating an imbalance in the game state might actually just be something that is a proxy for more experienced players. Because maybe that race is harder. So the only players that play it are players that really understand it. And therefore, they have a disproportionate win rate. That could be the case, right? We can all imagine cases where some sort of stat could be misleading. So you don't want to balance purely off of stats. And that's why unit tests can't tell you the whole story either, because a unit test might be throw 100 of this unit against 100 of that unit and see which unit wins, or to what degree does it win. And then based on that, we can draw some conclusions. It's useful as a starter, but it really just gives you some information that you should be seeking more context for after the fact. So I would say, if you're not designing around hard counters, which are usually built around specific statistical breakpoints, where at any point any future change will completely screw them over, and this is why StarCraft 2, for example, was so fragile as a game, is because the balance could just change at any point based on the fact that all of their stuff is built around hard counters. If you're not designing around hard counters, but instead designing around agency, player agency, and a wide, robust toolkit, as I keep saying, that sort of is almost a buzzword around me. Robust toolkit. Does the player have a robust toolkit? That's the point, though, is to make sure that players have a good station to enact their particular playstyle through, right? What's up, Balethal? Yeah, anti heal. That's a good one. It kind of reminds me of Chalk suggesting at some point the um he suggested an armor pen armor, if you know what I'm saying, like armor that specifically counteracted armor pen only, or a stat that specifically countered that. I don't really think that makes any sense personally, because I feel like it's only going to interact and engage with specific interactions, right? So it's very, very limited in scope. But that was one of his ideas that he had, that he would probably experiment with given the opportunity. So never know. It does seem like you would just want to add more armor, but specifically, I think he was going after an interaction where a unit would counter the attacks from high armor pen, low damage attacks. So without countering attacks with, well, actually, yeah, I don't even remember what the context was. He's not here to defend himself, so I won't besmirch his name. But either way, it would be, I think, overly complicated in the interactions that it would provide. And I think there's something nice about simplicity, where like the formula for calculating damage in Cosmonarchy and in Dreamhold, for that matter, I don't think we'll use a different formula for that, is just, it's like you've got your armor and you've got your base damage and you've got your armor pen, and those are the only three things that you need, actually. And so the armor takes damage equal to, I forget what the exact formula is. It's very simple though. It's like basically the damage can do no more than itself. It doesn't gain damage based on armor pen, but it will ignore armor. So it's like armor. It's like damage. The final damage is base damage minus, and then in parentheses, armor minus armor pen. So it's like super basic. No, the whole point of me bringing it up is that it was overly complex. What do I think of formations in games? Well, formations just take control away from the player and automate the act of arranging your units in a specific formation. So they take something that should be a skill, that ought to be a skill, that if it were a skill, right, or if it were something that the player had to do themselves, would be something we could say is skillful if done well, and is not skillful if done poorly. And it automates that. So artificially raising the skill floor. It also takes control away from the player and precision away from the player, which is the same reason why squads are terrible. So I don't actually remember if we go through formations in... No, we don't go through formations in the have-not section, but we do have squads in the have-not section. So if you're curious about some of the decision-making behind ignoring formations, this would be a good paragraph to read here, where it says, I'll proofread it, or I'll skim through it here for you guys and say, in a title with squads, orders are not carried out by individual units, but instead by an invisible system that governs the behavior of squad members and attempts to interpret the player's original intent. So this is talking about how they remove the precise control that you have in a game like StarCraft and sub it out for a system that just tries to do something in the vein, in the vague direction of what you were trying to do initially. So I also think that if you have a large scale game, you don't need squads. And that's what squads usually are. They stand in as a proxy for a game that actually has scale, because you get large numbers of units on screen, but they aren't really individual units, and you don't have control of them as such. Yeah, especially if formations start engaging with the statistics of a unit, I feel like it starts getting really messy and really hard to visualize. I guess you could probably do like icons or something, but then you have to learn what each icon is representative of. I just think it's an overcomplicated system that takes control away from the player, adds more layers of interpretation and abstraction, is not performant generally speaking, although that's a side tangent and maybe it could be performant. It just doesn't. It doesn't. It feels like on a gameplay level, it doesn't give me what I want. Takes stuff away from me, raises the skill floor, and then on a more nuts and bolts level, usually results in worse pathfinding, worse performance, and artificially achieved scale. So I don't see any value in squads or any value in formations. Enoz asks, how well would you say StarCraft is balanced? StarCraft is balanced around some people not using their race to the fullest extent of its strengths. And I know this because maps are specifically designed to gimp Terran, for example, and gate certain strengths that other races have. And I guess lately some of the maps in the professional map pool have had really weird gimmicks, like legitimately deliberately broken height values to hide vision when you're scouting, and then deliberately spammed pre-placed disruption fields, disruption webs, to stop you from being able to fight under certain areas. I guess that's technically consistent since it's part of the map, but it does feel like a weird shot in the dark. I think when you have a game like StarCraft, it is a level above StarCraft 2. Like, StarCraft 2 wasn't even half the game Brood War was from a competitive standpoint. StarCraft 2 basically is what happens when you get people who actually try to make an esport TM. Brood War is just above and beyond way better. But don't forget that the community themselves had to save the game by balancing it through maps, because Blizzard didn't know what they were doing, and like the best you can say is that some of their patches were kind of smart, where they like raised the cost of the spawning pool, and slightly reduced the cost of the scout, but none of that is really that useful, man. Like, Blizzard accidentally a game, and they would go on to never repeat that feat after Brood War. Which is a shame, because it would have been nice for them to learn from something, but it just can't happen. Oh yeah, this is a morph. But Brood War is the glass ceiling of RTS. It's the best any RTS has ever been. Be very easy to do better, but people just haven't tried. They've tried to emulate the financial success without really understanding what made Brood War compelling to play. Now, I believe that I understand what made Brood War compelling to play. And to some degree, the success or not of my titles will determine how accurate my read on the subject is. But I think I've made a pretty compelling case, and so far have engaged in plenty of internet discourse, and nobody has been able to convince me, or really nobody's really even tried to convince me otherwise. But that gives me some confidence, some external confidence in the idea that I'm correct, that I've tried to vet these claims by having debates and discussions with plenty of people, and some points have been considered, but really nothing major has, like, I think the most that changed was my awakening to the idea that upgrades were not good. And that was just like basically re-examining a base assumption that I hadn't really thought of for a while. Well, Tasagi is a real thing, Terran being overpowered. Um, but the races are more or less forced to be consistent based on the maps. I think Kespa could have done something way better than what they actually did. If they decided to go for maps that would like be more matchup based, basically. So you could have like a map that was pretty good for Zerg and ZVP. The pro scene could have been way better, man. The pro scene could have been way better. But, you know, match fixing killed it. See, words of praise from Balethal. I think my brother has a funny note in the chat. The last game Blizzard released was Overwatch. And I say game very loosely. That should tell you a lot about this company. Everything else has been expansion packs to World of Warcraft, or maybe Diablo 3's expansion pack came out after Overwatch. I can't remember the timeline there. Pretty close either way. But it was either an expansion pack or it was a remaster. The last original title, like full title that they released, was Overwatch. And Overwatch 2 is actually also an expansion pack, so whatever. I don't know why they called it Overwatch 2. Surely that's going to be very confusing. What a mess. What's up, Beaver? Oh yeah, I saw your 3 earlier. How you doing, dude? I feel like I own Insurgency Sandstorm. Is that true? Oops, that's not. No, I guess I don't own it. I don't know why I thought I did. Oh, it's on my wish list. I've seen this game before, I think. No. Maybe I saw a video on it or something. I came up with the Zerg names. Basically, I have a suffix that was partially derived from existing suffixes, like Hydralisk has Lisk as the suffix, so does Mutalisk and Ultralisk. So I decided to make consistent definitions for each suffix. So Lisk would be like mid-range, or core. Mostly it's like core or row core. That's melee. So you get like Gorgra core, Ultra core, Zethra core instead of Zergling, stuff like that. And then artillery would be Alor. So that would be like Cascathalor, stuff like that. Gazithalor is another one. And then specialist stuff would be Leth at the end of it. So Droleth for worker, Avaleth instead of Overlord. So basically, I went through and I de-larded all of the names by naming them stuff that actually sounds a bit more otherworldly to pronounce. Like the Defiler went from a stupid action verb to Istrathaleth, which some people say is too far. Some people say that this method doesn't really yield readable names, but I still feel like it's pretty good. And generally speaking, I tried to make, this is a very abstract topic, but I did try to make the syllables and like the guttural senses that you get from saying a word. I did try to make that somewhat fit the profile of the unit, particularly when renaming an existing unit. So, like, Istrathaleth sounds, to me, very, like, just bizarre, and the Defiler is a very weird unit. So, on that very base level, that would be one avenue where I tried to, like, mirror that, but in a way that is very foreign. Like, you don't know what any of these elements mean. Like they're not references to other words. The closest you got is the ultra core, which I went from ultra Lisk to ultro core to make it row core. That obviously still has a little bit of a nod to the original unit name. And then I guess there's Matroleth, which could be like matriarch or something, but it's dropped the I and it's a bit different. I haven't read much Lovecraft, but I did try to just make it sound very otherworldly. Country Strike. Yeah, some people say, yeah, that I think it's coming back to me now because I think War Owl made a video on it, and I may have seen that. Insurgency Sandstorm is like more realistic, I think, so harder to read, is what that translates to. I'm more of like a Quake type guy when it comes to player agency, readability, mobility. Counter Strike is okay in that department, but it's getting pretty bad readability wise lately. And to answer Beaver's question, since all I did was say, hi, I saw your 3 earlier, I don't think I actually answered his question. Yeah, I am porting, I've been porting units for a while. I'm actually porting orders and buttons now. So I've got like the buttons to train all of the units and stuff, essentially. So I just finished the units. So now it's time to do the buildings, and then we'll be good to go. Then I can plug in the data on the actual side of the like actually plug in the button set data. Do that. I wonder if iCore will ever come back and see that I finally added, in some fashion or another, the Chasmal Colony, which was something he was very excited about. Now, don't ask me why he was very excited about that, but he was. I never got around to renaming the Zerg buildings besides Extractor to Excisant, which sounds sufficiently different to me. But I was planning on doing it at some point. Now, feel free to ask questions. When I do these streams, I don't expect to be on task all the time. Otherwise, I would just do a recording or not stream at all. If you got questions, hit me with them. Besides, eventually somebody will ask me a question, and I'll go on a rant for 10 minutes, and I'll upload that as a clip. We like clips around. Well, I guess we'll just call it a defensive. Yeah, I guess we can call it. You saw my 3-2? Is that what you just said? 3-2-1? I kind of like the idea of like addressing the entire chat, everybody watching and chatting, and just saying you. So nobody knows who I'm even talking to. I guess I can show off what the buttons currently look like as well. Yeah. We'll say production. I guess we can't call it a larval colony anymore, can we? Because it doesn't actually generate larvae. I don't actually have a clip channel yet. I should make one. It's just uploaded here. There's a playlist somewhere. Actually, I kind of want to find a specific segment where I... There was a part where I won't find it now live, but there was a part in the talk show I was just in where I absolutely destroyed an entire CS:GO team. I'll have to put that in the clips channel at some point. I feel like I know exactly what you're talking about, Shirk, but I also don't. So my answer is you, Vader, with a question mark. In the hopes that you will utterly destroy your microphone port again. Honestly, the clips that I do have are pretty hilarious. Some of the responses have been hilarious, is what I mean to say. Like the people, yeah, the people who drop those, who occasionally talk about those, they're pretty good. Shamble Man has arrived. What's up, dude? I'm plugging in some data entry right now while I think about what I'm going to do next. That'll be substantive to Xibalba itself. Call it that. Easy. Lair. More like lame. I am kind of tempted to give the lair some sort of unique gimmick. And by gimmick, I mostly just mean passive. But it would probably fuck a lot of stuff up. I think I fucked up here and I didn't add type build to any of this. I can fix that easily enough. I wonder how that even happened. I must have been very sleepy. I think I was very sleepy when I first did this, because I've been ruining my sleep schedule so that I can watch the CSGO major that's happening. So I was probably like trying to stay up so that I could do that. Anyway, it's important that I get these in here so that I can also change some of these to type morph. There we go. Yeah, in Cosmonarchy Brood War, we have we don't have 4 tiers of tech for every regency, or every race, I should say, in Brood War, but we added a bunch. I think the total unit count is like the new unit count is over 100 or close to it. Well, surely it must be over 100. Right? I say that, but we only have 200 and something unit entries to even work with. I would have added way more if I had A, more graphics, and B, more unit entries. But yeah, the Cosmonarchy Brood War is de facto the most ambitious mod that the game has ever seen. That has actually delivered upon a playable result anyway. I'm sure there were some projects that were supposed to be way bigger. Most mods that you'll see barely offer anything new. Some total conversions would probably outdo me in terms of... Well, no, even then, I don't think they would have added more new units and structures than I did. But technically, they would have had like brand new races and stuff, right? So theoretically, there are some projects that would have been adding more in that sense. But I also overhauled the AI. I provided pretty comprehensive audio work for a lot of the units. So yeah, it's probably got the most new content out of any mod. Is that sarcasm, roller skates? Or have you actually decided to get 8 hours of sleep every day? Yeah, if Brood War didn't limit me so much, though, Balethal, I probably would not have started Antikythera work with Veek as immediately as we did. Which, even still, saying it as immediately as we did is kind of disingenuous. Because we did definitely drag ass a bit on the starting process. So we could have done it way sooner. I do have an alternate reality in my head where Brood War is even more limiting, and that means that I start Antikythera sooner. But I had to meet Veek and develop a relationship with him, and then like work together with him on a bunch of stuff, and then eventually get to the point where he felt like like he could theoretically enter into a long-term working relationship with me to work on this stuff. In order for it to happen the way it did. So I almost can't really see it happening any other way, even though in my head I want to say, if you only gave up on Brood War sooner, you motherfucker. Whatever. That is pretty good, roller skates. Oh shit, Shamble man, what are you doing in 4 hours? Wait, what? Where do you? Are you also watching the CS:GO Major, bro? What the fuck? Why are you waking up at like 2 a.m. Texas time? What is the Cosmo colony even called? Supportive structure. I hope I didn't make any obvious typos. Yeah, dude, I know where Shamble's from. At least I think he's from Texas. All I remember is he one time said that he one time edited I think it was General Duke lines for UED Commander's Brood War alternate. He edited dialogue and said I made sure he sounds Texan. So I just assume that means he's from Texas. Dude, we got 3 Texans in the chat, I think. Wait, isn't Shirk also in Texas? Why is everybody in the street? Why is the population of Texas watching my stream? We might have more than 3, which is even more surprising than having 3 in many ways. Yeah, what the fuck? Pretty intense. Yeah. Texan supremacy. This is build and exactly. Texas Cosmonarchy scene. Now you're talking. Now you're speaking my language. You know, guys, I actually had a dream, a fever dream, I might add, where I was watching a CSGO tournament on my phone in bed, which is pretty relevant, actually. I do that a lot. And in the dream, it was a bunch of players I'd never even heard of before playing Fraud Strike instead of CSGO. And there was some like casting duo that I don't really remember the names of. I feel like they were probably some popular casting duo, but I can't remember. And I couldn't exactly place them, but they were like talking about like, oh, you see a lot of blitzkriegs on the T side here. Everybody's a big fan of the blitzkrieg gun. And they were like trying to explain Fraud Strike to new viewers or something. It was very surreal. Basically, like it was a cast over. That's what it was. What is this? Artillery. Pretty spooky. The only thing I know about Texas is Alamo and Joe Rogan. That is only slightly an exaggeration. I guess it is also artillery technically. Oh yeah, Beaver's right. Everything is also big there. Yeah, a lot of my favorite people are in Texas. As far as internet individuals go. A lot of my favorite horse dewormers. People don't know what an anter is. They probably think Almacus anter is just gibberish. And it basically is. Let's be real. Wait, what the fuck? into like they've specifically drafted 5 specific territories. That's pretty good. That's like when somebody's like, Texas is like the equivalent of when your girlfriend's like looking through her phone and tapping a bunch of profiles on Tinder, saying while also looking at you and saying, "I think we should see other people." Like she's come to you with a plan. She's already got plans, bro. Pretty good bit. I do find it kind of funny that everybody thinks that Texas is like the same, basically. A lot of people don't realize how much of a like there's like a lot of tech stuff happening over there. Oh, and when I was talking about Almeca Santa earlier, Orboth Amelia is actually insane. It is just gibberish. Nobody knows. So I think that covers everything here. I just need to comment out Kethros Keep. Yeah, roller skates you should walk around the universe in shades. TBH. All right, boys, let's do it. I don't know why some of these orders are in this way, but order observance. All right. So we got order Z and order X. So I've sorted the buildings into weird categories right now. But what's up, Ryan? Cosmonarchy Brood War is basically in a state where I'm giving it occasional updates, but we're at a lot of limits. Like, we're basically at the unit limit. We're at the sound string limit, which is not the same as the sound limit because we extended the sound limit. But we can't add strings that point to sounds because we're at the limit for that. So unless we can circumvent that somehow, we're fucked. I can't add any new unit responses, for example, or just general sounds. So that's already strapping us quite a bit. And there's a bunch of other issues, like the fact that we're memory hacking all of our changes in, which means we can't ever stably add anything, and we run the risk of everything falling apart. And it's already kind of unstable in its current form. For example, I don't think you can play like player versus player multiplayer without desyncing. There's a lot of problems, basically. But the point I'm getting to here is that I don't think that we'll be able to completely fix all of those. But I am in the process right now on stream of porting the like a version of Cosmonarchy Brood War, a more updated, less constrained version of Cosmonarchy Brood War to a new engine that Veek and I have been working on for the last 3 months or so. So it's in a position where you can already like move around and harvest units. We automatically generate shadows and some other stuff. So we're getting there. We're getting there. If you're interested in progress updates for that, I would say hop in the Discord server for one. We do post updates pretty regularly there. But also, we'll probably be less than a month out from a playable version in the new engine. We have to really investigate pathfinding. We have to handle other AI, unless we wanted to just do player versus player stuff. And then we also need to tackle networking again. But once those 3 things are taken care of and I've done some data entry, I think we're probably less than a month out from a release in that engine, which obviously isn't done through Brood War, but would be way more stable and would put our new engine through its paces. There you go. I'm rallying the Californians to the People's Republic of Austin so that we may turn Texas to the side of the People's Revolution. That could happen. The Leaning Tower of Pizza. All right, let me think about the icon here. Zerg here. Here it is. So this isn't even order, by the way. This is submenu. Yeah, here it is. All right, back to orders. Yeah, I suppose that's to protect you from the slow city takeover of a otherwise fairly diverse state, you could say. Because people in cities tend to think pretty similarly about some core issues. Ah, that's the other one I needed. So obviously, the capital letter that I've got here is the hotkey, and then the build thing is the order, based on the order name entry here. So next we've got, oops, build Hydroc Den, and then order F will be build Orboth Omlia. And then what else do we need? We need I guess we could do Z for Nidus Canal. I know we need Gezkath Grotto as a separate structure. Zorka's Shroud. Matravel Nest and Sovthrath Mound. So we'll probably do this in order of tier, which means we'll be left with, it'll be Zorka's, Matravel, Sovthrath, and then Gezkath. Although I guess that means we don't really need the other structure thing, so we should just say that. We may need to split this up later. But misspelled plague? You? Oh, instead of Californian Exodus, I see. I thought he was talking to me. Confused. Vor. Hey, we can finally add creep spread to the Bactylisk at some point. I still can't believe that Rise Son of Rome game was a real game. I mean, a real movie. Oh no, this is Train Calcalisk. I wonder what these asterisks mean. Maybe it's like a hide until we actually have the button thing. Okay, I think we're good. Oh. Oh, okay. I didn't bother ever putting default hotkey on, so. Pokemon go to the polls, bro. I think we got everything here as well. Yeah, well, you also will need, you might want to add more structures anyway, or add other sources for a unit or something. Yeah. Oh, I wasn't doing. Well, I don't know about that one, but I guess I wouldn't be that surprised. So this is where I'm not actually sure about how we're gonna do the like inlining stuff. Um, lore. That's an interesting question. I mean, we don't really have that many lore bits, but if you wanted to check out a setting I was working on, I can link you. And if you wanted to discuss that, yeah, the Discord server would be your best bet. I was basically rewriting the setting from scratch. People are memeing on the Mental Omega update, I think. Oh no, I think Red Orchestra 2 might be something different. Whatever's going on, it looks funny. All right, Viker, here's a question for you. I'm going to write out basic stuff, right? So, do submenu. Find the egg icon. Where's my egg? Dude, surely I'm not just blind. Surely, oh, here it is, 30 seconds. What do we got? I actually don't remember what I did this as in game. Pretty goofy. Okay. Actually, I should reopen this. Oh, this is obviously supposed to be oops, on here, but I don't have space for it. This should be everything. So now, if we were to, let's see. So I've written out this huge list. I keep talking to Vika, and I don't even think he's here. I'll just DM him instead. Anyway, if we jump into the game, we should be able to see the fruits of my labor. Here we go. I hit C for some of these instead of D like a dummy. There you go. Obviously, the sorting on the stuff is all fucked right now, but we have Q. If we do that, out comes the Drolith. We're at fast speed right now. Do same for an Ovolith. Pretty cool. And then we can do Zethricore. Ah. Oh, I see. I don't have any gas. Turbo speed, boys. I need my Muta. Is it working? Pretty sure it worked that time. There it is. Pathing is still a bit wonky, as you can see. I don't know how to set game speed to a normal tick rate, but whatever. There we go. Why are my workers taking damage? Do you actually burn when returning Vespine? Hypervials, as it were? We just need a progress bar eventually. Here we go. Got my man, bro. This is a hover unit, but right now it doesn't ignore terrain. It's a bit weird. Yeah. Yeah, but I still can't actually build a reservoir anywhere, right? I could just build one out of nothing. That's pretty cool. We don't have any, we don't have entering into a structure yet. You could build that anywhere besides the geyser, yeah. Pretty good. So, there you go. Yeah, this post made by the Anticathon gang. Yeah, some of the units, some of the unit lines are pretty good, I think. I can't believe you actually did data entry for all these orders and then still made me reorient them. On the one hand, I'm impressed. Oh yeah, trust me, because I plan on having more voice lines than each individual unit will have more voice lines than Brood War units. So I forget what I think it's called petrification. Yeah. See ya, Luciferius. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, Veek, we have a ton of other things we should take a look at. Like networking and pathfinding are both pretty in sorry shape right now, I would say. But that doesn't necessarily mean we have to focus on them. Just think. This is how many units we have for Terran, some of which are speculative, like not implemented. I guess only 3 of these entries are not implemented. And this is how many units we'll have for the new engine. Oh, it's way more. There'll be way more than this, but I think when I left off, we had about 43 planned units for the NCF. So we're almost halfway to the final cut. Ah, the Uprise. I forgot about that one. Yeah, when the price isn't paid. Exactly. We are astronauts around here. Because the Ansifi are somewhat like they're basically the proxy for humans. They aren't human, but they are the closest thing to human that this setting has. I do kind of want a lot of their entry level unit responses to be very like cocksure and like generally upbeat. Like I imagine when you train a road trip, he just comes out of the factory going road trip or something like that. I guess that comes out of the fulcrum, I should say. You know, get shouting. I don't know, like calling because there's going to be more than one ready line for each unit as well. There will be at least 3 for each unit. So yeah, that'll be pretty interesting. I also don't know if any Regency will have like guttural war cry sounds the way Zerg do. The closest, like the obvious pick would be the Zerg-like race, which is the Orlithray. But I still think that the Orlithray will mostly communicate telepathically, so they will probably just say stuff in really like they might say nonsense, but it'll still sound like more like a thought, I guess. It'll sound like some other language you can't interpret, basically. But maybe it'll just be like guttural war cries of bestial nature with a telepathic filter. Savage shapeshifters, yeah, the rune. The rune could be it, since they are meant to be pretty bestial in nature, and their like home form, their default form is like a dog almost. Not really. It's not really like a dog. It's like the closest thing I could think of. It's like a very elongated. Like you're thinking like a. They range in length from like 8 to 9 feet or something, or like 3 meters. Like pretty long dogs, bro. If they are dogs. And they have like way more limbs than you would imagine. So that could work. But Since we're planning 100 units per regency or thereabouts, yeah. I'm imagining each unit requiring like maybe 20 unit responses because we think about like the ready lines when they're trained, the selection lines, the pissed off lines when they're selected too many times, the order acknowledged neutral lines, and the order acknowledged combat lines. And that would be like if you issue. I might even want to make another class where it's like order acknowledged caution or something, where if you issue a move command with like right click or something, they might just be pretty neutral. But if you issue an attack move command, they'll be like halfway between neutral and attacking, if you know what I mean. Um, to sort of reflect what the order actually is. Uh, and maybe those neutral lines could also be used for like some abilities that are not necessarily hostile in nature, like not a Psystorm. A Psystorm would probably just use the hostile action line. And then like a defensive matrix maybe would use like a halfway between line, right? Because it's like a support ability, but you're probably casting it in the middle of battle. So you want to be like alert when you say it. Stuff like that. I do all of the voices for Cosmonarchy Brood War. I did all the voice acting except for the Barghest and the Demiurge, which I pulled from some sci-fi games and edited. I think that those are the only ones that were external. I did all of the Zerg ones that are custom, and I did all of the other Protoss and all of the Terran. Dog with a gun description. Did I actually? I may have used that for the rune. I don't really remember. There will probably be some good-natured lines. Yeah, I don't think like the pissed lines themselves won't even really. They'll be entirely Easter eggs. I think not in the sense that they need to be like comedic, but you can imagine little like hints at deeper characterization of the setting or something, right? Yeah, exactly. There it is. I was actually thinking. So the other thing that unit responses will be required for is we're going to have a unit banter system. And that means that when, for example, in Cosmonarchy Brood War, I can give you a pretty easy example of what would constitute a banter system, right? And so if I have a Hierophant, right, and he's fighting a Maverick, right, and the Maverick then tries to fall away, if anytime at any point an enemy unit is running away from a Hierophant, there would be a small chance, if this sort of event hasn't happened and triggered a dialogue line, a banter line in the last, say, minute or so. I don't know what the cooldown would be on it, but basically there would be a small chance that the Hierophant themselves would shout out, face your opponent or something similar like that, right? Like yell at, call him a coward or whatever, like banter at him, right? So and then if they killed the Maverick while he was retreating in this hypothetical scenario, they might say another line, right? They might say like the line that I had written out was the fate of all fools. That was one line. And then there's like another one where they're just laughing. So I actually have all of these recorded, but I couldn't implement them in Brood War. So that will be something that we have that will add to the number of lines for each individual unit. That's why I said an estimate of 20 probably. Because if you imagine like 4 banter lines, 4 attack lines, 4 yes lines. Well, I guess it would be 8 attack lines since there'll be different kinds of attacking. And then there's like the 4 yes lines, the 4 ready lines or whatever. Like we're getting to the point where, yeah, it would probably be like 20, 25 if you add in the Easter egg pissed lines. That is pretty good. I do like that everybody everybody does call Cosmonarchy Brood War the Dark Souls of Brood War. And by everybody I mean one person. Owned and CP Longshot. Something like that, right? Like you can imagine some pretty good banter lines come out from that. And it can be satisfying and even almost what's the term? Like if you're on the receiving end of that, if you're the one running away from the Hierophant, or getting sniped by the long shot and you hear owned, you hear some line, there's going to be a psychological effect, right? And it'll probably be pretty minor for most people, but I just imagine that being icing on the cake, right? And it'll add character to the game where the units themselves express their character. beyond just having a unit sprite and having a combat roll. And then if you click on them, having a portrait and a wireframe, and if you own them, unit responses. Beyond all of those things, this will be a way for all units to get in on the action, so to speak. I do kind of like that idea, Shirk. Oh shit, Veek. That's 3 levels of Dark Souls. The Madness Demons are going to be insane. I think Shambler, you were here when I did my demonstration of what the Madness what the Kolopo Azos creatures are going to look like, where they literally like will occasionally just like half of them will vanish and it'll look like they're stepping on the threshold of a wall that you can't see, that is completely see-through. Stuff like that is pretty good. Yeah, a non fully mechanical unit. That's the other thing too, is that with the added control over the game with a new engine, we'll be able to do a lot more interesting things with the call and response type stuff, where we'll actually be able to detect, like, are they fighting something that even has a corpse? So filter out X, Y, and Z line or something. If we wanted to go that level of detail, we could. But everything will have some wreckage in the retail game of Cosmonarchy. So even if there's no corpse, you might still say their remains would still be of use or something like that. Yeah, R.I.P. Mixer, goat. Definitely the goat of streaming services. Or streaming platforms, I should say. Oh yeah, so to go back to the topic of of the pissed unit responses being the Easter egg sort of thing, I basically don't think that under any circumstances in a legit game you should be able to even proc those. If we copy the Brood War rules, where like you have to have like 5 unit responses, or I think it's 4 unit responses play from a unit before you can um, hear a pissed one. So stuff like that can definitely happen if the action is low, but odds are you're probably planning for the next bit of action, right? So unless you've defeated your opponent but he hasn't left yet, odds of you actually proccing the pissed lines are pretty slim. And I think that was always the case even in Brood War multiplayer. Like, it's not something that you do very often. But I think it'll still be worthwhile to add a couple of lines here. Maybe I'll have less than Brood War did. Like Brood War had an average of 4 per unit. Maybe I'll have like more closer to 2 or something. Because I also have to be cognizant of the fact that each individual sound file I add is going to increase the size on disk of the game and the size in RAM of assets loaded. So ironically, like, it sounds kind of silly, but like if I don't have, an extra 2 or 3 sound files for every unit that's in the game, I am going to, at the end of the day, save a lot of people a lot of storage space. So yeah, it basically Balathon. There are some pretty memorable Brood War pissed lines. I can't remember any of them off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure there are some that are memorable. Classic. So yeah, I think looking at the Ansifi tech map is pretty cool. I haven't thought about this stuff in a while. This is obviously the Centaur, if you're not familiar, drawn into the new engine and set as a tier 7 cruiser. Magnetar. For a while, I was thinking of calling the Phobos of the Magnetar, because then it would be it would have the tar suffix, just like Centaur and Minotaur, but I decided against it. Yeah, do you seek knowledge of time travel? I don't think it should be opt-in because it actually comes at a disadvantage for the receiving end players from a psychological standpoint. So if you disable it, then you're actually getting a competitive advantage. I think we should just make it code it so that it's not taxing. And if I have ideas that are too CPU intensive for calculations, then you just have to let me know that, and I'll change them. The Hierophant example was very specific. I think most banter will be like maybe they'll just have like a higher chance to proc if there's if they've recently cast an ability or something, uh, or can only proc if it within 10 seconds of casting an ability or something like that, right? Um, we'll find a way to make sure that the conditions for line delivery still maintains immersion on the battlefield, so that it's not like, for example, an apostle that which has an ability that revives allies says something about how epic he is for reviving allies when no allies nearby were revived in like the last minute. That would obviously like break immersion a bit, right? So we have to make sure that the conditions are accurate, but we can find a way to balance that with intent, like the intensivity of code. It's a competitive advantage if you disable it because you're not being shit talked by the game. Pretty sure everybody would say that that is a competitive disadvantage. Well, it being random has no bearing on whether or not it has a negative psychological effect on the enemy. I suppose if we're allowing people to disable voice lines entirely, then we can have a special exemption for banter, but I'm pretty sure the calculation has to run anyway, if unless everybody disables the setting for the sake of lockstep determinism, because maybe sounds don't count, but well, it's obviously not irrelevant because it absolutely has to meet specific predetermined calculations before or conditions before it can play. Yeah, but the story of the multiplayer game is told in part by the banter system, so it doesn't really make sense to imply that there's no story building there. Well, Balethal, it originates from a specific unit after specific conditions have been met. So it's not that game state would be impacted, but game state would definitely be read, and calculations would be made upon the game state in order to set the conditions for the sound to be true. So if there are calculations being had, I guess we could multi-thread it, and then it wouldn't matter. Um, so I guess we just have to see. I guess if there was like some in a worst case scenario, if there was some lag due to the calculations made there, um, I like that idea, Shirk. It's a good bit. So yeah, if it's multi-threaded, then it probably wouldn't matter. But we would obviously want to synchronize which sound is played for and from which unit it's sourced from. So that part would need to be, but that's probably pretty easy to do. Like we wouldn't want what happens in every other game that I've ever played in co-op or multiplayer, where banter from AI is like a completely different line. Where like I can't remember what game I was playing recently that did this. I think it was Payday 2, where you would get like a completely different line than your co-op partner. Yeah, I was pretty sure something like that had happened before, as Shambler's pointing out. Um, it's actually not a bad idea because you're getting the player base in on the story. Yeah, what I'm talking about, like specific elements that do have to 100% be synced. Reasonable. I actually wonder if we could involve the community in a interesting way by making it so that the of the regencies that have not recently received a single player campaign, the highest r- win rate regency would receive the next campaign, the next dedicated single player campaign. That's not related to like an expansion pack or something. So you could imagine a situation um, we're like a couple of expansion packs in or whatever. So there's like what 10 regencies, and people really want to play an Ansifi campaign. And so if that's the case, then they can influence or perhaps decide which campaign is made next by um, winning a lot of Ansifi games, basically. Although I guess this gives a perverse incentive to throw as other regencies if you want to fuck the stats. But I don't think many people would do that, and we can just discount games that end in below 5 minutes or something. So yeah, I think that could be a pretty cool thing, assuming we can account for all the potential ways that that system could be gamed. That could be a really neat way to encourage the community to play competitively, even if they want, even if they're mostly interested in single player content, because then they get to, well, basically, it would encourage cross pollination between the two scenes. I don't know what we would do for competitive players who never play single player content. They probably do. I mean, that's fine. I think what we do to encourage those people to play single player content is make it actually skill testing and challenging and rewarding and respectful, which no other RTS does. So, oh yeah, I guess that would be an obvious way to do it, right? Then you would just it would have to be a specifically like a competitive thing where um you can't like queue with your buddies and then like match fix basically. Yeah, that's why instead of it being a win rate thing, it would just be number of victories, like Beaver suggests. Speak. I think that would be fine. I'm not saying look at this cool race, everybody should play it. I'm just saying if you have a favorite race, then you want to have a single player campaign where you play as that race or regency. You should get as many W's in matchmaking as you can because that will influence or perhaps decide the like who gets the next campaign. I don't know how many people would actually get involved in that kind of movement, but I think it would be a cool way to again have that cross pollination approach. And obviously, like I said earlier, we have to make sure we're accounting for a system that we're accounting for regencies that have recently received campaigns. Like obviously, expansion pack regencies would I guess expansion pack regencies would be fine because the campaign that is a result of these W's would probably mean that like it would probably just come out in the next expansion pack anyway, right? So I would have plenty of time to prepare for it. But my point anyway was that if like the Ansifi won the first competitive born campaign, then it wouldn't matter if they were the first place in victories in the next round. I would just skip over them to the second place. I don't know if there will always be a most popular Regency Balethal. Since we have so many options, it feels kind of unlikely. Well, no, I should say without a non-core campaign. Like every regency will have at least one campaign, and that is not counted in the equation, basically. So for the first time we do this, I guess the first time we do this would be for the first expansion. So of the 6 regencies that already launched in retail and already had a campaign, um, there would be another campaign developed for the top victory regency or whatever. Yeah, I'm not saying there will be even amounts of play, but I think it'll be. I don't think there will be like a regency that people really hate playing to the point where they never get a campaign. Um, and the most popular regency aspect does take care of itself with um, the fact that we're ignoring the campaign, the regencies that have already received a campaign through this method. That is a point about absolute wins, but I suppose we could also filter it. We could have it be a ratio of like games played to wins, and whoever has the highest ratio. If we felt like that would change the, well, I guess we could make both calculations and then decide based on that what is the best way to go forward. But I still think for the first ones, in the interest of transparency, we would simply announce that we were basing it off of absolute wins, and then we can recalibrate the system if we feel like it's not good. Yeah, I know Balethal, but it's not. It's specifically not caring about like defeats don't weigh it down. Is what I was meaning. You're basically just accounting for a difference in number of games played, if you also consider win rate. Um, anyway, I'm not really that worried about one regency being more played than the others or stronger than the others. I think to counteract this, I mean, so when we first retail the game, we launch the retail game, we're probably not going to work on the expansion pack until like maybe a few months into development anyway, because, or a few months into release anyway, because we're going to be busy like making sure that the game itself is functioning, that multiplayer is going well, and that we're fixing bugs as they are reported and stuff like that, right? So we want to make sure that we do some post-launch care for at least a month, probably longer. Yeah. And the tournaments fight for a new campaign. That could be a good bit actually, if we have a competitive scene. Defeats don't weigh down absolute victories, is what I was saying, and that's why we would also consider the win rate approach. Wait, no, that's not even what I was talking about. I was talking about if you have a if you scale the victories commensurate to the playtime, the games played, or you scale the absolute victories with games played, that would give you a, basically if you look at the most, you take win rate stats and you would also take absolute victories and you would compare the two and you would see which one of the, like, does that change the standings? So basically, do you see a different number one in when you use either ones of them? And if you do, then maybe you make an adjustment. But I still don't think it'll be that big of a deal. I think, especially in the beginning, there's going to be a lot of experimentation. But the point that I was making about waiting for a few months, or at least a month, before working on the next expansion pack and announcing this competition, so to speak, would be that we would have enough time to iron out some of the balance issues that would come up, assuming that they do. And then, things would be at a more fair and even playing field, so to speak. I think there's probably, especially at the beginning of the game and at the launch, you're more likely to get a lot of people playing Ansifi and Ember Seat because those are the tutorial regencies, and they're kind of designed to be a bit more noob friendly anyway, especially the Ansifi. I think that will probably even out as time goes on. Well, played games plus wins would still be absolute as a number, so it would still scale. It would still not account for. It wouldn't give a chance to any lower popularity regencies. Is basically what I was saying. All right. I think that'll do it for the stream. We got a lot of work done, and go away. And we managed to finish the data entry for training units and structures. So I'll go ahead and push my work to the repo. Easy. And yeah, I think that'll do it. Thanks for hanging out, boys. Always a pleasure. If there's a ladder system, what about limiting the counts to just the upper brackets? Does that mean the upper ranks or something? Not sure about that one. I'll have to think about that. I still haven't figured out what we're doing for ladder. There's definitely a ladder, and you're scaled. You're counting like. I don't think I would want to limit it to a certain rank bracket. I think I would just count every win and loss, TBH. But I'll think more on that and get back to you. I'll probably do another one of these dev streams midweek next week, and I'll do another Command and Conquer stream in a few days. Until then, join the Discord server and say hi. Bye.